Hello and welcome to the Monroe Method Clancast. I am Jason Monroe. This is episode 160. Okay, so I promised in the last episode, yesterday for me, that I was going to come back and do one today. And here I am. And I do actually have a specific topic to talk about, you'll be pleased to know. So, I have felt a bit like a broken record. This week, or today, actually. Sorry, I'm just opening a can of water. A can of water. I stayed at a hotel a couple of weeks ago, and it had a mini fridge, and it had 2 cans of water. Now, I don't know if you've ever drank a can of water. Just water, right? As in water that's not in a bottle. It's in a can. It's a very strange experience. Like when I put a can to my lips, generally speaking, something fizzy comes out. It's weird. Anyway, yeah, I've been a bit like a broken record this week. So January, I've said this before, the start of January is not typically my busiest time. It's busy, but it's not the busiest. It's going to be busiest at the end of the month. But there's still lots of people signing up, lots of things done today's Monday, lots of new starts and things done. And something that is coming up time and time again. So when people get to day 7, they fill out a form, their first form, and they're telling me all about themselves. And we've already done some work basically leading up to that point that can help them fill it in a bit more easily, right? So they've already worked through the first 7 days of the course. We've done days 2 and 3. We understand what our food attachments are, what our goals are, weight loss not being a goal, weight loss being the thing that facilitates the goal, food attachments being the things that are all the reasons that we use food that aren't related to hunger. So we get to the point on day 7 and they should have all the information they need to fill the form in. Now, something that's coming up quite a lot when we're talking about obstacles, right? So here's where you want to be. Tell me what the obstacles are that are stopping you from getting there. Portion sizes, portion control has come up so much, to the point where I want to go back and re-record a part of the course so it doesn't come up anymore, because I've been saying the same thing over and over. This is how it works, right? So I'll get to a point where I'm saying something over and over again. I'm like, okay, I need to put this somewhere so that people are being educated on it, so that everyone, we can preempt it rather than me having to talk about it, multiple times a day. And this is why podcast episodes are also good. So the thing that I have been telling lots of people today and last week is that I don't focus on portion sizes, okay? Now, there is a very particular reason for that. If you've ever seen the portion control system, it's so fucking stupid. A fist of this, a palm of that, 3 fingers of this, a thumb of this. Like, nobody's paying attention to that shit. They pay as much attention to that as they do the red, green and amber nutrition colourings on the front of packets. Like, nobody cares. Now, when it comes to portion control, what people are generally talking about is the amount of food that they put on a plate. Okay? Changing the amount of food on your plate. Now, portions are not the problem. As with anything you've ever heard me talk about. Yes, there are many things that are problems, but they're not the problem. Portions are not the problem. They are a problem, but they're not the problem. Portions should not be an issue. If you are someone who gets a plate of food put in front of you and you eat it, and you're not sitting in front of a TV, you're not glued to a phone, you're not reading, you're not working, you're actually paying attention and connecting to the act of eating, you can feel your stomach filling up, you're enjoying the food, and you're in the best possible position for your brain or your stomach to get that message to the brain to say, that's us starting to get pretty full now, could you ask them to stop? And they send a signal to your brain, and your brain says, right, Jason, time to stop eating. And in that moment, you have a choice to make. Are you going to stop eating because your body's telling you you're full and you don't need any more? Or are you going to hit that big red override button and say, nah, I want to keep going? That's the problem. Controlling portions only works in specific circumstances, specific settings. So at home, sure, instead of using a large dinner plate, you could use a smaller side plate, or if you have like a smaller in-between plate or whatever, and you could fill that plate and you could clear that plate. Now, yes, you've eaten less food than if you were to put it all in the big plate, but the problem still remains. And the problem is that you are someone who clears every plate of food. You don't allow fullness to guide your eating. You allowed quantity to guide your eating, right? So and I think I spoke about this, it's just giving me deja vu. I think I've spoke about this in a post on Instagram this week, but it's basically like your body will tell you what a portion size should be. It's your job to create the conditions to allow that to happen. Now, if you are sitting down to a balanced meal that has vegetables on the plate, that has a protein source on the plate, you're not sitting with a plate in your lap in front of the TV, you're not driving, you're not standing up, you're not sitting at your desk working, you're not sitting scrolling, phones in one hand, forks in the other hand. You've sat down to perform one task, and that task is to eat. And you are eating the meal in front of you, you're sat at a table, and you're not distracted. Now, if you are taking your time and eating that meal, not eating at a ridiculously quick pace, there is time for the process in your body to send signals back and forth to say, that's it, we've had enough, and then you stop eating. It does not matter how much food is left on your plate. Do you know, that's just reminded me, I used to post about this a lot on social media years ago. When I was doing my nutrition course, actually, 2019, I posted quite a lot about these things. And I had a little hashtag on the go. Hashtag satisfied, not stuffed, right? And I remember I posted a picture of a meal, and then I posted a picture when I was finished the meal, and it said satisfied, not stuffed, right? And there was like something like 3 boiled potatoes or something left on the plate. And somebody replied and said, oh, but you're not going to finish that. There's only a few left, right? And that is such a perfect example of quantity eating, right? Oh, I would just finish that. Well, that's fine for you. I don't need to finish that because I'm full and I've stopped. It doesn't matter if there's 3 potatoes left, 10 potatoes left, or half a potato left. You don't eat something just because it's all that's left, right? That's when we're starting to get very disconnected from the purpose of eating, from what eating is actually for. I was hungry. I sat down to a meal. I got to a point where I wasn't hungry anymore. And it just so happened there was 2 or 3 potatoes left. You don't finish it just because that's all that's left. If that's your mentality, if that's the way that you think, if that's the way that you view these things, then that's a problem. And it also explains one of the many reasons why, I say many because there's never only just one reason. It explains one of the many reasons behind why you have weight to lose, why you are struggling with your weight, because you allow portions to guide your eating. You allow plate sizes to guide your eating. You allow your thoughts around, oh, well, there's only a little bit left, I might as well finish it to guide your eating. If I had put more food on that plate and I had stopped eating at the exact same time, it wouldn't have just been 2 or 3 potatoes, it would have been more food. I've never thought about this before, but this is a really good example. If you get to a point where you are full and there's a little bit of food left on your plate, that's something to be celebrated because it means you've nailed your portion size, right? If you get full and you've still got half your dinner left, it's because you've put far too much food on your plate. If you get to the point where you're full and there's a quarter left, then it's not too bad, but you've still put too much out. If you get to the point where you're full and there's 2 or 3 potatoes left, or a handful of chips, or a little bit of whatever it is, then you've almost nailed it. The thing that I've been explaining to clients a lot is that we don't control portion sizes as the start point, because all that does is facilitate the underlying problem. So remember, what is the underlying issue, right? Portion sizes are not a problem until the person also clears every plate. So if I put a mountain of food on your plate, you're going to clear it. If I put a little bit of food on your plate, you're going to clear it. So why would we control the portions when it's not solving the underlying issue? And like I started to say earlier, that only works at home. When you put a certain amount of food on your plate, what happens when you go to a friend's house and they are dishing out dinner? What happens when you go to a restaurant? You can't control the portion sizes there. 100 people in a restaurant, all different heights, ages, weights, activity levels, etc., all different calorie burns. If those 100 people order the 1,500 calorie fish and chips, they're all going to get the 1,500 calorie fish and chips, and they're going to get the exact same portion. It's not a restaurant's responsibility to look at each person and calculate how much food that person needs to eat. That responsibility is placed entirely on you. It's your job to be able to stop when you're full, to know when it's time to stop eating. It's not up to the restaurant. It doesn't matter how big their portion sizes are. Your stomach size doesn't change. Your energy needs don't change just because there's more food on a plate. So yeah, the advice that I give to my clients is basically everything that I've just said, right? We don't focus on portion sizes. What we do is we develop the skill of stopping eating when we start to feel full. And that comes the foundation of that is putting yourself in the best possible environment, the best possible conditions to allow that to happen. Going back to everything I said about eating at a table, not eating in front of the TV, no distractions, not scrolling a phone, right? You make a deal with yourself that when I am going to eat, that is all I am doing. Because if I make that my only focus, then my full attention is on it. And it means that I have got full awareness, meaning I am then able to hear when that signal's being sent that says you're full. You know, I think I spoke about this yesterday in the other episode about how when I was younger, I developed a habit of eating very quickly. Like I never knew how to listen to that signal because I overrode it every time. I ate so fast because I had to clear the plate because that's how things were done in my house. And it wasn't until 10, 15 minutes later when everything finally settles in your stomach and then that reading gets sent to the brain and says, holy fuck, you've eaten far too much. And then you feel stuffed. So we shouldn't be if you're finding out how full you are 10 minutes after you've finished eating, you're eating far too quickly. So you need to slow your ass down. But yeah, it's about creating the right environment, the right conditions to hear that message. Like if you think about eating in front of the TV, 90% of your attention is on the TV. You do not need a lot of brain power to use your hands to find a plate and get a fork to your mouth. You know where the plate is, you know where the food is, you know where your mouth is, you can do it on autopilot. It's the same like when people take full tubs of Pringles or full sharing bags of crisps or packets of biscuits to the couch. You're sitting on the couch and your hand goes packet to mouth, barely registering what's happening. If I said to you, how many crisps have you eaten? You would go, I don't know. How many biscuits have you had? I don't know. You would have no idea because it's just this automatic motion and you're so disconnected from it that you're not even fully enjoying it. You know, I've got a can of juice in front of me. Have you ever done this? Have you ever lifted a can? Most people do not sit and drink a can of juice and they do it mindfully, right? It's this focused thing. Like I'm drinking this can of water while recording a podcast, right? Or if I'm drinking a coffee, I'm doing it while I'm sat working. I'm not generally sitting staring at a cup of coffee, like totally engaging with it. So most of you will have done this. You lift a can of juice to take a drink only to realise it's finished. Or you lift a cup of tea to take another drink only to realise you've already finished it. That's mindlessness, and we can transfer that to food as well. We can be sat on the couch and we put our hand into the Pringle tub and the only time we find out that it's empty is when our hand hits the bottom. Or similar with a sharing bag of crisps or a packet of sweets. So yeah, portion sizes stem from a person's habit of clearing every plate. And that can stem from what we spoke about before, like some of that comes from childhood, some of it comes from other places, some of it comes from food waste, some of it comes from not being allowed to leave the table, or you had to clear your plate so that you could earn sweets. Some of it's the reward mentality. So we overcome that not by controlling the portion size, not as a start point. We overcome that, again, by developing the skill of being able to stop when we start to feel full. That's it. After that, then we can change portion sizes, because once you start to learn how much food it actually takes to fill you up instead of overly fill you or stuff you, once you start to learn how much food is left on the plate, that then filters back into, okay, so let's say today you eat very mindfully, no distractions, and you find out that you fill up on 2/3 of what you put on the plate. So tomorrow you put a quarter less on your plate and you eat until you're satisfied and then you stop eating. Now there's a little bit left on the plate. Now you can continue like that. because, you're not going to reach the same level of fullness every single time. There's not always going to be the exact same distance between meals. Sometimes you're going to have a lunch that isn't very filling and you are going to need a little bit more dinner. Sometimes maybe you've had a bigger lunch that was filling, and then when it comes to dinner time, you find that you fill up on a much smaller amount. But you get to a point where it's not food waste anymore. You're now getting much better at, the first skill to develop is stopping eating when you start to feel full. The next one will be learning what a portion size should look like for you specifically, because your portion size will not look the same as your husband or your wife's or your kids. Because we all have different needs. We all eat differently during the day. We all have different energy levels. Another thing, actually, while I'm talking about wives and husbands, something that's come up quite a lot this week is women talking about eating to match their partners. So, in one instance, the partner did all the cooking, and when he put a portion out, he put out 2 meals the exact same size, which were his size. So we've got a 6 foot whatever guy with a very active job with a large plate full of food, also putting out the same amount for his 5'4" wife, who sits at a desk all day and isn't as active as he is. But because she sees someone else eating, beyond how much she's having, she wants to go along with it. And then he'll then snack later on, which makes her want to do that. So what we have in that case is a guy who is not overweight, who is eating to his needs, who's absolutely nailing maintenance. But now we've got someone, his partner, who's also trying to eat the same as his. The problem is that's far in excess of what she needs. So his weight does nothing, her weight's increasing. And it's all because she's trying to eat his portion sizes instead of her own portion sizes. So it's really important. Again, it just comes back to us getting much better at eating to our own needs, not anybody else's needs, not the size of a plate, not how much food people tell us we should be eating because, there's only a few left, and you're not going to finish that. Don't control your portion size. It's no different to like changing your weight, right? People can try and lose weight by changing the number on the scale. And it works, but it doesn't solve the underlying problems of why that number got to where it was in the first place. And again, you can change the portion of food that you're putting on your plate, but if you're still the same person who clears every plate, let's say you spend a month at home cooking your own meals on a smaller plate and you're eating less food, you're losing weight, but the problem's still there because you're clearing every one of those plates. You've not solved anything, you've just scaled back the problem. And then you go into another month where it's a birthday month and it's your birthday and it's your partner's birthday and it's a kid's birthday and it's also your parents' wedding anniversary and you've got 5 or 6 meals out. And you go to those meals and you're not controlling the portion sizes and the underlying habit that we've not solved is there, so you're clearing every one of those plates. So forget about portion sizes. Focus entirely on developing the lifelong skill, because this is something that will help you maintain your weight for life. It's something your long-term maintenance will be dependent on. Develop the lifelong skill of being able to stop eating when you start to feel full. That's it. That's all we're doing today. We're keeping it completely on topic. Until next time.